Like as
Yeah.
humans, we're very good at picking up. It only takes one or two instances of a negative reaction from your manager for you to say that I'm just not going to speak up anymore because like I did it once and maybe, they didn't react well. Maybe that was a one off. I did it again and they didn't react well. So I'm not going to do it a third time or a fourth time or an
Yeah.
nth time. Right. So it's actually very easy for people to pick up on these things, which is why it's extremely important as a manager to have self restraint. You need to make
Mm.
sure that you are not accidentally traumatizing people because you had a bad day and you're snippy and you're sharp and you shut someone down because in that person's mind that is now logged.
Today's guest is Wes Kao, who is the founder, marketer, and advisor who writes newsletter for high performers in tech. She's co-founder of Maven, which is an educational tech company that raised 25 millions from Andreessen Horowitz. Wes is a management and communication expert, and during the interview, I asked her for advice for engineers. We talked about managing up, good communication, both in writing and in person, and rigorous thinking. So let's dive right into it after a short word from our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by Swarmia, the engineering effectiveness platform for modern software organizations. Swarmia gives everyone in the engineering organization, from the CTO to software engineers, full visibility into the three key perspectives of engineering effectiveness: business outcomes, developer productivity, and developer experience. They recently published a book on the topic called Build: Elements of an Effective Software Organization. The book is a blueprint for continuous improvement that seeks to help good software teams get better and remain effective as the organization grows and evolves. You can read it for free at swarmia.com/build. Hey Wes, great to see you. Thank you for being here with us today.
Thanks, Luca. I'm very, very excited for our chat today.
Yeah, me too. And I don't know if you know it, but you're the very first non-engineer guest on the podcast.
I am so honored. That's
Yes,
awesome.
yes. So you have a bar, to clear now. But I think it's very appropriate because you're a full-time writer now, and you are a founder and a marketer, and you often write about things that engineers struggle with. So
Mhm.
that's why you're here, to give us the opportunity to look at these things from the other side as well. So I'm talking of good communication, relationship with managers. So I love your newsletter. Thank you again for being here, and I'm excited to talk about these things.
Yeah, let's get into it.
So I will start by, I think, one of the topics that you write about most often. It's one of the most popular on your newsletter, which is managing up. Right. So yeah, it's kind of a divisive topic because there are people who are not sure about what they should do with it, whether they should do it or not, or how to do it. So I want to pick your brain about what do you think it's important to manage up, and what do people get wrong about it?
Yeah. So, many people, when you think about managing up, you think my manager is my manager, so they should manage me.
Yeah.
It's their job to manage me. Why should I have to manage up? Right? I'll wait until I'm a manager before I have to do that. And the thing is, if you think like that, you give up a lot of agency around your control with how your relationship with your manager can be. And so, managing up is one of those things where when I was earlier in my career, I thought that it was something that junior and mid level people did.
Yeah.
And that eventually you would grow out of it. You would become senior
Yeah.
enough that you no longer had to manage up. And I soon realized that this is wrong. It's been 16 years of working full time, and I've always had to manage up. Even when you are a co founder, you're managing up to your CEO. If you are a C-level exec, you're managing up to your CEO. CEO's managing up to their
Mm.
board, right? So it really never ends. And so it's something that I think you might as well get good at. You might as well embrace it, get good at it, because it opens up so many opportunities where your manager has more visibility into your work. They trust you more when they know what you're working on, how you're thinking about the problems that you're working on, um, and when they have more visibility and trust in you, you have more autonomy. You have more free reign, you have more leeway to make an impact, to take risks, to get the benefit of the
Yeah.
doubt. And when you have this autonomy, you're able to make a bigger impact. And then it
Yeah.
becomes this really virtuous cycle that feeds into itself.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I think many people are confused by what managing up really looks like, in practice, or how to put that in practice in real life. Is that something that you should do like with ceremonies on a regular basis? It's just a matter of good communication whenever you speak with your manager. So what does good managing up look like in real life?
Yeah, great question. I think managing up goes so far beyond, the more surface level tips you might see, like send a weekly recap of what you work on,
Yeah,
for example, right? Like, first of all, I've never been able to do that. I've always tried it. Like maximum, I can do it for 2 weeks before I just like get it too in my head. It takes too long to write. It doesn't feel worth
yeah,
it. And so I don't think advice like that uh, is that helpful. I think
yeah,
that managing up actually goes much deeper, and I think it really hits on acting like an owner with your work and reducing cognitive load for your manager. For yourself, your work is 100% of the pie, right? If you think of a pie chart, for your manager, your work might be 10% of their pie. They have other direct
yeah,
reports. They have, some of them are responsible for producing IC work themselves. They are, providing cover for your team, goal setting, a bunch of other stuff. And so you really want to think about how can I reduce cognitive load for my manager? And so there's a couple different frameworks that I like to think about. One is the question behind the question. So if your manager
mm,
comes to you with a question, uh, there might be a surface level question, but there might be something deeper underneath. And the way that you can tell if there is a question behind the question is if you feel like you fully addressed what they asked you, but they keep asking follow up questions. They keep being skeptical. They feel like you have not satisfied or reached the burden of proof of whatever they were wanting to know. And so you kind of do this like never ending back and forth when really what you should do is pause and think about
mm,
what might be the underlying concern here. How do I
yeah,
address that proactively so that my manager feels safe that I've got this handled? So, for
yeah,
example, like let's say you haven't been managing up, it's been 3 weeks, this project deadline's coming up, your manager has no idea how it's going or if it's going at all. And they say, hey, how's that project going? So, if you answered at face value, you might say, oh, it's going great. Thanks for asking, and leave it at that.
and that's it. Yeah,
That is not a satisfying answer. Like, if you think about the question behind the question, your manager is thinking, am I the manager about to need to clean up this person's mess because they haven't been doing what they said they were going to do? And my head is on the chopping block, right? As a manager, I'm responsible for all the work that my team does. And so, am I about to need to clean up like a colossal shit show, basically? Right. And so,
yeah,
that's the question behind the question. And so if you address that, you would answer differently. You would say
yeah,
something like, "Hey, yes, I've got it under control. I've been, checking our metrics. We're tracking along to forecast. Share a couple data points, a couple examples, and then say, I'm keeping an eye on if anything changes, I'll flag it to you. If there's anything else that you want to know, let me know. Happy to share more." Right?
yeah,
So you're sharing a bit more upfront. You're sharing data points, you're sharing evidence, you're sharing uh, examples, and all of this helps your manager feel satisfied with your answer, and it addresses that underlying question of, okay, I trust that this person really does have it handled.
yeah. I think this is a great take, especially because getting really to the core of what are the real concerns by your managers, when you understand that, that's what I think enables you to become proactive in communication, in being able to address these concerns even before your manager raised their hand and asks you
Hmm.
about them. But that requires alignment, and I think it's not easy many times when sometimes managers and reports, it's like they speak different languages, so there's like this mismatch, especially in engineering. We have all this obscure technical stuff, and it's not easy for engineers to get their points across sometimes. So I don't know if that happened to you working with people at your companies at Maven or your other startups, and if you have any advice about bridging this gap in communication that arises sometimes.
Yes, definitely. So I have a couple thoughts here. The first is um, bottom line upfront, bluff. That's what they call it in the military. And this is so useful, especially in remote work environments or writing environments that are more writing forward. Right? There's a lot of async communication. So if you have a longer message, putting the bottom line up front, the main point, your question,
Yeah,
your action item right up front, and then saying the context below. So, what this does is it gives your reader agency because
yeah,
if they already agree with what you're saying, they don't need to read on. But if they have further questions, they're not sure, they're a bit skeptical, then they can read your thought process below. And many
yeah,
times the context, how you got to where you got to, is just as important as whatever your main point is, right? And so when you offer that up front, it allows people to be able to see your thought process really easily without needing to ask you a dozen follow-up questions, peppering you,
yeah.
just like trying to draw information out of you. It's super annoying. So that's one that I find really helpful, is structuring your communication in a easy to understand way. Again, reducing cognitive load for your reader, whether that's your manager or coworkers, right? So that's one thing.
Yeah, and
This,
can I say
oh,
this is counterintuitive sometimes, right? Because I think we all have this tendency to try to put up front all the reasoning behind some fact that we are concerned that our manager will not approve the direction or will challenge the direction that we are proposing, and so we are tempted to put all that wall of text or wall of reasoning up front, to defend ourselves. While instead, what you're saying is that communication is clear if you put your main point that you want to get across up front, and then only if your manager wants to learn more about it, have to go through the rest of your reasoning that is below. Otherwise, it's not necessary.
yeah, I mean, essentially, you're still sharing your thought process. You're still
Yeah,
sharing your rationale, your logic. You're arguing your point. You're just structuring the message so that uh, they immediately see
yeah,
the most important point, and then everything below kind of supports that. So
yeah,
I definitely think that including that rationale is super important. You just don't want your main point to be buried in
yeah,
sentence 13 out of 25, where it's like this, and this, and I thought about this, and then I almost did this, but I decided not to, and then this super important thing, and then blah blah blah. Right? So it's like if it's
yeah,
buried, it's really hard for people to know. What do you want from me? How do you want me to help?
yeah,
Right? And many times your manager does want to help you. They're just not really sure what you're looking for. And we've all been there, right? Like you've gotten a message, Slack message from a coworker or a direct report, and they say all this stuff, and at the end you're like, okay, this is all super interesting. I love it. What do you want me to
yeah.
do? Like what do you need from me? Right? Like I'm ready to
Yes.
support you. I am eager to support you. Like what actually do you want me to do? And so just making that super clear up front a lot of times removes the friction from people wanting to help you.
Yeah.
I was going to say there was something else with in terms of
Sure.
of getting our points across, and that's a framework that I call bad things, good things. And what that
Okay.
is asking yourself and proactively addressing what bad things happen if we don't do this proposed idea, and what good things happen if we do this idea. And what this allows you to do is really quickly get your recipient thinking about why this matters. So if you're flagging a problem, for example, saying, if we don't fix this thing, this is going to crash, or customers, the
Yeah.
complaints are going to go through the roof, or this is costing us X number of hours every week, or this is costing us, you know, whatever, right? Like, what are the stakes involved? These are the bad things that may happen if we don't address this thing. And then if we
Yeah.
do address it, what good things happen? So if we do, then, this streamlines a bunch of stuff, or, this is going to make customers happier. This is going to attract, the right blah, blah, blah. So the reason that this is so useful is because people usually fall into two buckets. They are either more motivated by loss aversion, so
Mm.
wanting to reduce downside risk, wanting to avoid loss, right? So that's bucket one. or they're more motivated by upside, by
Yeah.
gains, by expansion, by new things that I don't have yet, right? So most people fall in the former bucket. Most of us would rather keep what we have and want to protect that than like have some possibility of gaining something new. But regardless of which bucket your audience falls in, you're completely covered when you think about
Yeah.
when you address what bad things happen and what good things happen. So I
Yeah.
love starting conversations that way to really focus in on why does this even matter? Why are we even talking about it? If people understand why you're talking about it, why this matters, they're way more likely to appreciate your solution. If they don't think
Yeah.
there's a problem, why should they care about your solution? That's where a lot of that frustration happens when you feel like you've thought a lot about the solution and the problem and people just don't appreciate it. And then a lot of times it's because you didn't do a good job explaining what that problem was and why it mattered in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this ties in nicely with what you said before about the question before the question, the fact of understanding what are the real concerns by your manager, because sometimes you have to understand what are the real KPIs, the real kind of numbers, the real things that matter to your manager that might be slightly different from your day-to-day concerns as an engineer, for example. So by just saying, I want to, get rid of this big piece of technical debt just doesn't cut it because it doesn't speak to what are the values and the things that are valued by your manager, by other stakeholders. So you have to understand, in my experience, you have to be able to express things in a way that delivers the value that people you are talking with expect with the the units of measure and the specific kinds of value that speak to what are other people's concerns.
Exactly. And I think a lot of times that comes down to painting an evocative picture for the person, for them to really feel the pain. If you
Yeah,
just say, like, this is a really big problem, it sucks, that doesn't give the person a lot to work with, right? Whereas if
yeah,
you say, this is exposing us to risk in XYZ ways, managers hate being exposed to risk. Leaders hate being exposed to risk, right? So, like,
yeah,
saying that, it's all of a sudden their ears are perking up, right? Or if you're saying that, this needing to maintain this is costing us 15 hours per week when it really should cost us 15 minutes. And over time, this is not sustainable. We could be spending these 15 hours building, XYZ thing that you said you wanted me to build. I could be doing that. I can't because I'm doing this thing that is
yeah.
super inefficient, right? So when you explain things that way, it helps your manager realize, wow, like this is actually costing us something and, we should probably address this.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the right recipe. I think sometimes it just takes time, even to figure out what speaks the most to your manager. You just develop the relationship in a way that you understand what is the best way to present your points and your initiatives. Different people, like you said, have different ways of thinking about things. Some people are more affected by loss aversion. Others are thinking about gaining stuff. So it really depends, and that's why I think the personal relationship with the individual person still matters a lot in what good communication is about.
Definitely.
So we spoke so far about communication, let's say on a general and relationship point of view level, a point of view, but there is a lot of communication that also happens through processes like meetings or docs that get written periodically. So that's an area that got, I think, a lot of attention even in recent years because of the whole shift to remote work. Teams just work differently. So do you have any advice about I mean, first of all, how was it for you? And if you have any advice about how to have maybe better and fewer meetings, how to replace them with more written, good communication, like in the style that you have explained so far.
Yeah. So my company Maven is completely remote and we have a writing culture. And I think that
Yeah,
that's very useful in many ways because writing is scalable for people in the organization to read. If you only discuss things in meetings, whoever wasn't in the meeting is not getting that context. Whereas if you write a great write up explaining your proposal or a great strategy doc, people can comment on it. It can get circulated around. It allows other people to riff on it or push back. So we were very big on written communication. It's definitely something that takes some practice, I think, because there's a higher bar for clarity when you write. There's a great Paul Graham essay on this where he talks about how when you sit down to write about something that you're so confident in, you soon realize that you don't have as much clarity about that idea as you thought you did. And this is another reason why just recording yourself talking and then transcribing that into text doesn't work. I feel like anyone who's ever tried that has realized that that doesn't work because you realize that you were saying a bunch of stuff that was kind of repetitive or like disjointed. The logical flow wasn't there. The bar is simply higher for written communication. Um, so I think the first thing is what I mentioned earlier with putting the main point at the top, context below. I think like that in itself is really helpful for you to even know what is my main point. So like putting
Yeah.
aside other people reading this, like what even am I trying to say really? What do I
Yeah.
want the other person to do? And sometimes you aren't really sure until you start writing. So I think that's the other thing to acknowledge is that. Many times the process of writing is exploratory in nature, especially if you are doing generative work. You are creating something that wasn't there before. You are brainstorming and articulating an approach or a strategy. Um, you know, it's creative work. And so as you're writing, you might be arguing with yourself. You might be um,
Yeah.
vetting the idea. You might be figuring out how much conviction you really have. What are the boundaries of this idea? This works in these situations, but actually not in these situations. So I should speak more accurately, right? And kind of amend what I was saying before to be more accurate. And so I think allowing yourself that space to realize that writing isn't necessarily capturing fully formed thoughts. A lot of times, the
Yeah.
act of writing helps you arrive at whatever it is that you're wanting to say. I think that's another one. Um, and then uh, what else? I think the other thing is thinking rigorously. So I have an essay on
Mm.
this. I have 20 some questions to ask yourself to think more rigorously. So who is this for? Uh,
Yeah.
what is the goal of this? What does success look like? What are reasons not to do this? What are the obvious counterpoints? Those are all things that, if you think about those a bit more, it can make your writing a lot more seamless and a lot easier. So I know my second
Yeah.
point was basically like write to discover, but also the
Yeah.
third point is kind of the opposite of that, which is um, sometimes you don't want to jump straight into writing. Sometimes you should think more about what you want to say and what you actually mean, get clear on that, and then the writing becomes much smoother. So, you can kind of bounce back between the different approaches. But I find that considering those things makes your end result a lot stronger and you get to a strong piece of communication a lot faster.
Yeah, I loved your piece about rigorous thinking because I for sure agree. I mean, I'm a full-time writer now, so I understand that it resonates with me that good communication is like, and good writing is a byproduct of good thinking, right? But while there is a lot of advice online that you can find about good writing, good communication, there is less advice about good thinking because it feels like good thinking is like a fluffy thing. I mean, you don't really have to think about how to think. While
Yeah.
instead, I mean, your piece is very practical. You know, it demonstrates that you can do very practical things to improve the way you think by asking yourself simple questions. But if you do that all the time, it will improve your output, the output of your thinking drastically.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah. So you said that Maven is fully remote. It has always it been full remote, or does it move? Why did it move to remote from having being hybrid or an office or what else?
My co-founders and I started the company during the pandemic. So
Okay. So
so
no
I
choice.
I didn't even see my coworkers until, the COVID restrictions lifted months after. Um, I knew one co-founder because we went to high school together and college together.
Yeah.
We were kind of acquaintances. We weren't good friends at that point. But I knew him. And the other co-founder, my technical co-founder, I didn't even meet until we had been working for months um,
Yeah.
really remotely.
And have you found that working completely, fully remotely brought your team and yourself to do things differently from other experiences you had in the past in terms of what kind of processes, what kind of writing, what kind of meetings and things you put in place?
Yeah, I think that there's a higher bar with accountability, with
Yeah.
ownership, with good communication when you're remote. When you're in person, you can stop by someone's desk to share this quick piece of information. You can all kind of get together. And I think the difference with remote versus in person is the number of levers that you have to communicate, right? When you're in person, you
Yeah.
have facial expressions, you have tone of voice, you have uh, the general energy that the person is bringing. Are they somber and, kind of sketchy or like in a bad mood? Or are they really excited about this? They're super confident. All of those are basically clues for your,
Yeah.
coworkers, and they're levers for you as the presenter and speaker. Whereas when you're remote, you, in writing and Slack, email, you have cold hard text.
Yeah.
You know, it's
Yeah.
it's text only, sometimes not even rich formatting. It's just like text, right? Um, and then of course there's Zoom meetings and Loom videos that you can record, and those are better because those kind of give you more levers if you want them. Um, we actually had a video camera off um, default policy, which I love.
Okay.
I think that more companies should do this. It's a little bit controversial because a lot of people, love seeing each other's faces, and there's definitely benefit to that. And I just said how it's more levers with like understanding each other and stuff. But um, excuse me, I think there is a cost to sitting really still, staring at a
Yeah.
screen in a webcam for hours on end. Like people
Yeah.
just aren't meant for that, Like even in person in meetings, like that's different. I don't know. There's something different about that. Like when you're sitting staring at a screen and like the camera's on you, like you cannot move without looking
Yeah.
disrespectful to your coworkers. There's something about that that is so excruciating. So like
Yeah.
we do cameras off. I find that it allows me to kind of focus more and just listen to the person. Sometimes I'm pacing around my house, or I'm on a walk, or even like if I'm in front of my computer, like it's just I think more sustainable to have cameras off. So I like that a lot. Um, and we do a lot of Loom videos.
Mm.
So
Mm.
Maven employees are in the top. This is kind of a fun fact. We were in the top 15% of all Loom users, which is
Wow.
which is pretty wild. And actually,
Yeah.
one of our employees is in the top 3% of all Loom users. So
Wow.
like we're heavy on the async communication, and filming something that someone can listen to on 1.7x speed or 2x speed. I mean,
Yeah.
thank God for 2x speed, right? Like when I have to
Yes.
listen to something on 1x, I'm like, oh, like this feels wrong. So it's great. Like give people the opportunity to you know your recipient to easily review your message, to listen to your message on their own time. We also have asynchronous Slack channels. So, there's direct messages, right? So if you and I are DMing, it might be like Luca and Wes DM, but we would have an async Luca Wes channel.
Yeah.
And so basically, like,
Yeah.
that's for things that are not urgent. And
That's great.
90% of stuff goes into that channel because you can just look at it when you want to look at it, sometime within the next 24 hours. And so, like, all these ways I think are great for making life easier for ourselves and for our coworkers.
Yeah, I mean, I took so many notes. There are so many things I want to follow up with. The first one is this: the last thing that you said. I think it's great. The difference between async and sync channels, because I think there are so many people that say that Slack is like anxious. When you receive a notification, you have this feeling that you have to answer immediately. The chat and everything. Why? What you're saying is that you create channels that explicitly, I mean, the contract for the channel is that you don't need to answer right away. It's like asynchronous for things that you can even, catch up with at a later time.
Yes, exactly. And we go a step further because I think people when they first start um, are not sure if we really mean it when we say like a lot of
Yeah.
stuff is fine to check async. So I encourage my team to turn off all notifications on Slack. Like, I really don't think that you need to be pinged every time someone is messaging you. You just don't. Like, there's no risk that you're gonna forget to check Slack, okay? Like, if
Yes.
you're at your desk, no one is forgetting to check email and check Slack. Like, in fact, we check too much. Most people check too much, right? Because in between moments, you know, you're you're kind of stuck on some deep work you're doing. You're like, why don't I check my email, or why don't I check Twitter, or why don't I check whatever? Like, no one is forgetting to check these channels.
Yeah.
So you do not need a notification. Just turn off all the notifications and check at whatever intervals you want to check at. Um, and then we also agree as a team that if there is something really urgent, we text the person or call them. So so
Okay.
you can trust that. You can trust that if Luca really wanted to reach me, he would text me or call me. And if I really needed to reach him, I would do the same.
Yeah. I love that you address these things intentionally because otherwise, if people are left to just using the tool as it is, they may not understand what are the rules of engagement. I mean, whether they're expected to reply sooner or later, they fall into the trap of thinking that they have to reply as soon as possible. While it really speaks to the extent where remote work is kind of counterintuitive, where a lot of things that you take for granted in real life, instead, when you're each other from its own house, that you have to write down rules of how to communicate for things that otherwise wouldn't be probably necessary. It's common sense, but you have
Mhm.
to make that explicit to make people understand how they can behave.
I think the explicit thing is the most important. I think in general we could all be more explicit to each other
Yeah.
at work. I think the reason why people don't trust, when if I'm joining your team, Luca, and you say like, oh, you don't need to check things right away, is because so often we hear that, and then like the next time you send me something and I'm not checking it right away, you're upset at me, right? Like that's happened
Yeah.
before, where someone tells us something and then we're like, okay, cool, and then you do the thing and then they're like not cool with it. And so we're kind of left guessing, like, okay, you're saying this, but what do you really mean? Like, are you really
Yeah.
okay with that? And I think just being more explicit about what you actually mean, volunteering that information, and then celebrating it when the person does it. Like when
Yeah.
when they don't reply right away, that's awesome. Like, you want to celebrate that
Yeah.
to encourage people to continue down that path.
Yeah, totally. And I think there is also another dimension to this, that is, if it's only me that I say to somebody, you don't need to reply right away, they might think, okay, it's a Luca thing, but it might not apply to other people, right? And to other people, I should reply immediately, maybe. While instead you make that explicit, you write down in your, I don't know, you have cultural documents,
Mhm.
things where
Onboarding
that,
documents. Yep.
yeah, onboarding documents, and people see it and it's official. It's how it works at Maven, it's how it works at the company, and it's on a different level. So another thing that I note down while you spoke is the use of async videos, right? Because I think it's one of the things that really took off with the pandemic, the shift to remote work. Because I mean, remote work has been there for many years, even before that. But there are things about tooling that kind of took off and went to a different level than before. And I think I'm hearing from many teams that asynchronous video is one of those things. So I wanted to ask, what are you using them for? Is it for specific things or for any kind of communication?
I love doing asynchronous videos, so I'm very glad that we're talking about this. I think they're so underutilized. I use them for
I agree.
pretty much everything. Like there's so many things that you could schedule a call for and tell
Yeah,
someone live, um, but you could also tell them in a video, or a voice memo, especially if it's knowledge transfer and one directional
yeah,
information, right? Like if there is a discussion, if you need to debate something, if you need to get their thoughts on something, um, in real time, like that might make sense to do a discussion. But even then, I feel like there's a lot of stuff that you can record a Loom video for. The person can watch it, and then you meet. Like I do that a lot. I did that a lot with my team, where they would do a Loom walkthrough of a spreadsheet that they created, and then like walk me through the different parts of it, or they would do a Loom walkthrough of something else, a strategy doc, and then we would meet to talk about it, and we would both go in with a higher baseline understanding of context, um, and be able to start the conversation from a much better place. So it's actually like when should you not use
Yeah.
asynchronous recording more than when should you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I use them a lot, and with people I work with for refactoring as well, I record like all the procedures, things that maybe I used to do myself to make them understand really how I do things, and we comment on them. And I have to say, I don't know how it was it for you, but then when Loom added all the AI integrations to, for the key points of the videos and the summary, it was like a
Awesome
game changer
feature.
for me. Yeah, I mean, one of the best uses of AI that
Yes.
still to this day, because sometimes you record the video and it's like, I don't know, 6 to 7 minutes long. It's not super long, but it's still, kind
Yep.
of long. And having the chapters automatically, the title and the summary there, is seriously one of the best uses of AI in my life.
Yeah, agreed.
And speaking of AI, has it changed somehow the way that teams you have been working with work in terms of processes, things that it can take off the table uh, for managers or for marketers or for engineers? What kind of usage of AI are you seeing from your point of view?
Yeah, I think for me personally, it's I feel like I read a lot about how everyone is using AI. It's so integrated in
Yeah,
their workflows. I wouldn't say it's super integrated in my workflow, but I do feel like it's opened up levers that I didn't previously have before. So Midjourney, for example, I think is a great one. I am non-technical. I love working with designers, and I think I have pretty good taste with being able to creative direct. But I don't know, how to use Figma, Photoshop, etc., Illustrator. And with the advent of Midjourney, I can now
yeah,
create my own images relatively easily from prompting. And so with my newsletter, for example, I created all my own Midjourney images, and that's so cool because previously
yeah.
you just wouldn't, someone who's non-technical just wouldn't be able to do that, especially not at that speed and not by yourself. So that's been really exciting.
Yeah, yeah, it's the same for me. I mean, I also use Midjourney a lot for sketching things, for figuring out ideas, also for the newsletter. So it's really empowering because there are many uses of AI that focus on being more productive on some things that maybe you were already doing. But there are, I think, uses that not everybody talks that much. That is, it really empowers you to do things that previously you couldn't do at all. Like
Hmm.
the Midjourney example, it's not like the most frequent example you get, for example, from engineers and other people, but it's really the example of something where you couldn't do something at all before, you
Yeah,
can now.
yeah, that's so
Which,
powerful.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. So we have talked about communication, relationships, managers, how to talk with managers, and one of the most common challenges that I get asked on the community, on the newsletter, is about transitioning from an individual contributor of any kind. Of
Mm.
course, engineers are the most frequent on refactoring. To a manager, right? So I think it's one of the most daunting times in anybody's career because it's like a different job altogether. So I wanted to ask, how was it for you? And if you have any advice for first-time managers who are going through this.
Yes. Yeah, it's really a transition that you only understand, I think, when you live through it. Uh, I describe my transition from going from an IC to being a manager like going from seeing in black and white to seeing in color. It was like, oh my God, this whole other sense that I didn't realize existed. And it actually made me kind of think through um, my past relationships with my managers and past instances or past struggles with managers through a whole other different lens. There were many times where I would look at my manager and think like what are you really doing? Even like it feels like I'm
Yeah,
doing all the work here. Like what are you doing? And then when I became a manager, I realized just all the different moving parts of
yeah,
uh, the ambiguity that you're
yeah,
dealing with as a manager. That many times you reduce that ambiguity before you pass something off to your direct report. Like by the time
yeah,
it's landed on your direct report's desk, you've already actually shaped quite a bit of it. And then of course, your direct report, there's still a lot of creative decisions and execution requires a lot of skill and whatnot. But there was just kind of all this other stuff that I hadn't thought about.
yeah,
And yeah, so I think, let's see, advice for transitioning to,
That's a
you
tough
know,
one.
yeah, I feel like so much of being a change agent internally, of being a high
Mm,
performer, a lot of those skills apply to whether you're producing work by yourself or whether you're delegating to people and whether you're managing them. Um, I think, you know, m- learning about influencing without authority is really important
yeah,
as a manager. Um, I think many times people think that the biggest switch between going from IC to manager is that you have formal authority now, you know,
yeah,
and you do have formal authority, but it actually doesn't change things as much as you think it changes things. I think that's the part that people miss. You can't actually just throw stuff over the wall and tell your people to do it. You can't just
yeah,
say because I told you so. You can't just, uh, tell them to do things and expect 100% compliance. So I think like that's like I think an area where people new managers struggle because on the surface it seems like something really big has changed with now you being a manager, um, but underneath the hood, um, you know, I think that the biggest thing that managers should do is sell their ideas to their direct reports. So, we talked about managing up and like you kind of get that. It's like, okay, I have to sell my idea to the CEO. I have to sell my idea to my manager. Okay, fine, I get that. But
yeah,
people are surprised when I say that I spend just as much time selling my ideas to my own direct reports. And they're like,
yeah,
"Well, Wes, like these people work for you. Like just tell them what to do, right?" And that doesn't motivate people. Like if you are working with high performing smart people, they have a lot of options,
yeah,
right? Like they don't want to work for someone they don't respect. They don't want to work for on projects where they don't understand why they're doing it, right? So I think the bar is higher than ever to be a good manager because more and more ICs realize their optionality. And so as
yeah,
a manager, like you need to be someone that earns their respect, And so, I don't ever just throw things over the wall to tell people to do it. I always explain the why. Why is this important for the company now? Why are we doing this now? What does success look like? What do you think?
yeah,
How do you think we should shape this? Right? I want them to be part um, of shaping what this project is, not just executing, on directions that I give them. And that's better for me and for them. It's better for me because if I had to think about all the directions front to end, that's a lot of cognitive load. But also for them, like just following someone else's orders does not tend to be challenging for high performers.
yeah,
So when you frame up a problem and you invite them to solve it with you and they understand the end goal of where we're trying to go to, that is much more fun for them. They're much more likely to be committed to reach the timelines that they helped to set. So I think thinking about selling ideas to your direct reports is really underrated.
yeah. It's basically going back to what we said before. You're explaining the question behind the question. Making it easy for others to understand this without having them to figure it out by themselves. What you really mean, what you really care about.
Exactly. And I love hearing my direct reports' point of view. So that's the other thing that I think new managers get wrong is like, finally, I have a throne. It's not the highest throne because there's a lot of managers above me, but I have a throne, Like this is where I get to tell other people what to do and share my point of view and have an audience, a captive audience, right? My direct reports. Um, and and I think it's important to pause on that and to make sure that you are asking your direct reports for their point of view. What do you
Yeah,
think? I think that's one of the most powerful phrases for any manager, especially new managers, is what do you think? Right? Like we talk about all this stuff. Like as a manager, you have a power dynamic where you are more likely to share anyway. So in any conversation, like
yeah,
you feel more free to share what you think, right? Whereas your direct report, because of that power dynamic, might be holding back a bit. They don't want to step on your toes. They want to respect you. So, they are a bit more cautious. So you have to actively invite them and draw them out to share openly. I want to hear
yeah,
what you think, right? Like, this is the problem. This is, here's how I'm thinking about it. Or even before I share how I think about it, what do you think? I will often say that. Like, I have some thoughts, but I want to hear what you think first. And
yeah,
most of the time when I do that, I'm shocked, pleasantly shocked at how the things that they thought of were the things that I would have said, A, and then B, they also thought of things that I didn't think of. And I'm so glad that they mentioned that I didn't, set the anchor in a different direction if I had gone first. So inviting other people to share what they think with you, and constantly reinforcing them to share their point of view, I think that's how you get the most out of your team members and how you build a leadership bench. You don't want to build a team of rule followers. That is not that useful for the company. If if you become known as a manager who grooms people to become leaders in the company, more people will want to work for you because they know that when I work
Yeah.
with Luca, like everyone on Luca's team, like works on exciting stuff, like goes on to, do big things, like, right? Because uh, he wants to hear what you think, he challenges you to think rigorously, he coaches you, he's a sparring partner with you. Like those are all really great things to be known for as a manager.
Yeah, yeah, I think this is a great take, and especially it all comes up to the fact that great people don't want to be told what they need to do, right? They don't want to be, managed with authority, but they want to own things. They want to be autonomous in doing things and in owning bigger things. So I think it's really super crucial for a manager to get people together and share their opinions. But it's, I think the hardest part is creating that kind of environment, that kind of culture of psychological safety where people think they're safe at expressing their opinion, and they know that they have a part, they have a say on this. And I don't know, I think it takes time, I think it takes experience, because the when you're a first time manager, I think you also feel the pressure that you have to deliver, you have to perform well, and maybe you still think that you have to do things yourself, right? So you
Mhm.
have to make decisions, you have to do the things, and that counterintuitively takes away some ownership from your team. I don't know if that resonates with you.
Yeah. Yeah, I want to touch on the psychological safety piece because I think that's so important. It's
Yeah.
foundational to getting people to want to share. Um, I actually think that it doesn't take that much time to build psychological safety. Uh, the reason I say that is because um, the way that you destroy psychological safety is by giving people wrist slaps when they come to you
Mm,
with an idea and you disagree with it, or you don't think it's a good idea, and you react poorly to that, or you shut
yeah.
them down. um, and the reason I say that it doesn't take that much time is because I think that people very quickly pick up on clues of what makes my manager happy and what makes my manager annoyed or upset. Like as
Yeah.
humans, we're very good at picking up. It only takes one or two instances of a negative reaction from your manager for you to say that I'm just not going to speak up anymore. Because like I did it once and maybe, they didn't react well. Maybe that was a one off. I did it again and they didn't react well, so I'm not going to do it a third time or a fourth time or an
Yeah.
nth time, right? So it's actually very easy for people to pick up on these things, which is why it's extremely important as a manager to have self restraint. You need to make
Mm,
sure that you are not accidentally traumatizing people because you had a bad day and you're snippy and you're sharp and you shut someone down, because in that person's mind that is now logged. Like that was logged as the reaction Luca gave me, right? Like whether it was
yeah.
positive or negative. And so practicing that self-restraint, knowing that as a manager now people put more weight on what you say, they are watching you when you don't think they're watching you. Uh, any reaction, positive or negative, they're just carrying with more weight. I had an exec on my team was telling me how one of his direct reports, um, uh, he had given her some feedback on something, and 3 weeks later, in a one-on-one, she brings it up and is like, I wanted to check in, like, have I been doing better on this thing? And he was like,
Yeah.
what? Like, I don't even remember saying that. Like, I actually thought you were pretty great on it. I just had like a very minor piece of feedback. It was like you were like at 95% and I was trying to get you to like 97%.
Yeah.
In the person's mind, in his direct report's mind, hearing what he had said, she probably thought she was at a 30% and needed to
Yeah.
get to 50% because she sucked and needed to like suck a little bit less. And so it's just like, wow, like as a manager, like sometimes you just don't think about how like the offhand thing that you say, like the person is really taking to heart. So
Yeah.
I think like especially in the beginning when you start working with someone, I like to
Yeah.
overcorrect or like
Over
over
communicate.
index on making it safe, you know? So like making sure that I'm asking for their point of view. And then when they share it, celebrating that. Like, I love that you share this perspective, right? Like, I love that you went out on a limb here or like brought evidence from this or shared examples of that or, right? Like, where's this hunch coming from? Like, I want to hear more about it. You know, like I show genuine interest, you know, like you kind of have to like convince them that it's okay. Uh, because I think a lot of times we come in expecting that it's not okay, right? So if your people like are at neutral level, then maybe you don't need to overcorrect. But um, personally, for example, like so I've had so many wrist slaps over the years from sharing ideas and having my manager react poorly to them. That like
Yeah.
most people's default is let me err on the side of safety and it makes sense, like job security, right? Like self-preservation, like those are things we're thinking about. And it's like, why cause myself trouble at work if sharing an idea like might make my manager upset? So we're all coming in with this like this general attitude. And so if you do want your people to share, you have to overcorrect at the beginning to convince them that it's okay. And then once you set that baseline, then it's like, okay, now they know that it's okay. Now they know that when you share things with Luca, he's open to hearing you, right? Like he's gonna grill
Yeah.
you, he's gonna hold you to what you said and challenge you, and like you can't just say stupid random stuff and get away with it. Like you're gonna have to defend what you're saying, right? But like he's always open to hearing it, and he's never gonna just shut you down, right off the bat. He's always gonna hear you out and allow you to make the case, and that is just so beautiful and so positive and
It's
so
beautiful.
so
Yeah.
wonderful. I think.
Yeah, absolutely. But and I agree that especially the beginning when there is a new person on the team, uh, you can never, I think, communicate too much. I mean, there are so many things we take for granted. Like you said, somebody may be coming from a work experience that was less than ideal, and they were too much used to wrist laps, and they're used not to speak too much their mind. And they don't know what they want from them, what you want from them. They don't know that for you it's okay. So and as you said before, sometimes they don't even know how you spend your time. I mean, there is this big divide. People don't know what managers really do. I remember one time at my startup when I was a CTO, it was a small team, like 20 people team. We hired an intern, and after a few months that I was working with them, uh, he came to me and he said, he asked me what I was really doing, how I was spending my time, and I was like, heartbroken. It was like this person doesn't know what I do. And for me it was like it was trivial. I think I thought everybody knew, how I was spending my time. I was like kind of burned out, was doing so many things. You're a founder. While instead it stopped me in my thinking, and I thought, okay, I should communicate more. Probably I should make more visible what I care about, what I do. We take things for granted, but many people don't know anything about really how what we do and how we spend our time.
Yeah, I love what you said about over communicating. In my
Yeah,
experience, over communicating is actually the right amount of communication.
yeah,
Like in your mind, what you think is too much ends up being the right amount. And with so many managers that I've talked to and so many leaders I've talked to, most of them agree. Most of them are like, I'd rather have my team members voluntarily share too much about how they're thinking about their work and what's going on than share too little. It's actually
yeah,
very easy if you think about it for your manager to say oh, you can share a little bit less detail on that, or okay, I get it, or for your manager to only read half of what you sent them in Slack, like if you write a long memo, right? Like it's it's very easy for your manager to control that flow of information if you offer that information. But if you
yeah.
don't offer it, then the other person needs to pull it out of you. They need to like force it out of you, and that is difficult. So I always err on the side of over communication, at least in the beginning, until you calibrate with your manager.
Yeah, there is no such a thing as too much feedback, basically.
Hmm.
So, yeah, I wanted to ask another thing because you have worked on many projects that are about education and personal and professional growth, like Maven, like altMBA before that. So, you probably have opinions, like, and this is an euphemism about how professionals should invest on their own growth, right? And this is even a complicated time because many people feel threatened by AI. They're unsure about what skills they should focus on, what value they should bring long term. So do you have any advice about how people should invest on their personal and professional growth?
Yes. I think earlier in my career, I expected more formal learning opportunities with
Mm,
investing in my growth. So either like ones that the company would offer or, being able to take a pause from certain work projects to be able to learn. And I soon realized that that never happens. There's basically no dedicated learning time at work. Like, especially if you're at a startup, or you're building something new, or you're on a lean team, um, there's always too much going on, and you have to make the time. You have to make the time
yeah.
to learn, and a lot of times that might fall in outside work hours, right? So in the evenings or on weekends. It's not for everyone. I get that some people don't want to do that in their free time. I personally uh, love learning and love being intellectually stimulated. So for me, it's like part fun, part learning. Um,
Yeah.
and I think it's something that you need to decide that you want to do and make time for. But I am learning from all kinds of different sources at all times, from different channels, different media. So on social, I follow a bunch of interesting people. On LinkedIn, on Twitter, I'm constantly reading from new voices. Um, I follow a lot of people who I have no idea who they are, and I actually don't really care who they are. If I see a post that is insightful, that is interesting, that is well argued, that is well written, that's a fresh perspective, I'll immediately follow that person. And then I might look at their background and be like, okay, fine, this person works somewhere, whatever. But I'm mainly looking at the insight within whatever they wrote. Like that's my first point of contact with, do I want more insights like this? Um, so I very liberally follow a lot of people. Um, and read from a lot of different people. And then it's a very low cost to unfollow someone. So if you don't like their stuff anymore, just unfollow
Yeah.
them. Like the cost of being wrong is very low here. So I'm very liberal with following a lot of different voices, and I love my feed. Um, I'm also reading a lot of newsletters. So I subscribe to I think over 80 different newsletters, and I read them all, um, and I love it. So I'm constantly reading from uh, different industries, different functions, um, different types of newsletters. Like a bunch of newsletters I follow are not about business or um, work. They're like narrative nonfiction or like memoir type newsletters. Like Substack has a lot of great newsletters like that. Or humor.
Yeah.
I didn't even know that humor writing was a thing. Right? Like that was like a very
Yeah.
recent
Yeah. Yeah.
realization for me. And I was like, oh my God, this is so fascinating. And there's a different rhythm, there's a different pace, there's a different style. Um, and it's awesome because I think learning from a lot of different sources makes me a sharper thinker and a sharper writer. And I'm kind of subconsciously absorbing, a lot at all times. And then I also read a lot of books. Um, I go on library runs where I'll get like 10 different books. And I'll abandon it very quickly if I don't like the book. Like there's a lot of books that are just like you get it and
Mm.
you're like, this kind of sucks. Like I don't want to finish it, and I just abandon it. Fine. Um, and yeah, so I read a lot. Um, and I don't really do
Do you
podcasts as
read?
much, but
I
yeah.
have a very, very specific
Mhm.
question. Do you read like? No, you said you pick up many books and maybe you don't finish them, you don't like them. Because I'm asking because I have kind of a complicated relationship with nonfiction books
Mm.
because I find most of them like diluted or overly long when they could be
Yeah.
like shorter. So that doesn't happen to you as well to feel that way. And do you read it like linearly or do you skim them? Do you have strategies to come to cope with this?
Yes. So it depends on the reason I'm reading the book. So
Mm,
there are times when I want to change my mind on something. I want to be persuaded and convinced because I know something is good for me, but I haven't like changed my habit on it or I haven't changed, my behavior on something. And
yeah,
in those cases, I think reading more fully and actually, immersing myself in the author's world is useful. This is why I think that actually a one-page book summary does not always do the trick. Like, because technically, if you just wanted to know the gist and the high level of something, you could ask ChatGPT to summarize it for you, or like there's a lot of book summarizing apps and
yeah,
stuff. So theoretically, you could just read a one-page summary and get it. But I think that there's a difference between getting something intellectually and academically and theoretically versus viscerally,
Mm.
emotionally, psychologically, like really being bought in on something in a way that changes your own behavior. And so if there's something that like, I am trying to change my behavior on, I may read it more fully, even if like intellectually I already get the concept. If it's like factual, like and tactical and almost mechanical, like I want a certain piece of information. Once I get that, then I can put the book down and stop because I've already gotten it. I got what I need. I can, move on with my day and implement. And then the third thing is if I'm reading for fun, um, then I will let myself read at whatever pace I want to read. I think I'm a decently fast reader, but I used to like put a lot of pressure on myself to like read even faster and consume more books or whatever. And like, I realized that that was a really stupid contest to try to win with like reading more books or reading faster. Um, because if you're enjoying it, like let yourself enjoy it. Like not everything has to be a race. I think like a lot of
Yeah.
you know, smart, high performing people, like you assume everything is like a race or like there's like
Yeah.
metrics involved or whatever. And like sometimes if you like reading it, just like freaking let yourself read it. Like it's fine. Like
Yeah.
read it slowly, read the whole thing if you want to. Like if you're bored, you can stop reading it. Like usually if I'm bored, I'll stop reading it because I feel like
Yeah.
there are enough books that are both entertaining and educational that I would just go find the book that's entertaining and educational versus the one that is extremely dry and educational.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I think there is value in the time itself that you spend reading a book because I think when you spend many hours, reading a book from from back to back, what happens is that it's like you have a mental model of the book in your brain that kind of sticks, as opposed as if you just read the summary, because
Mhm.
I'm guilty of having gone through some summaries of books that I was not really sure if I want to read them, so maybe sometimes summaries are well made and the main points get across, but the difference in my experience is that they don't stick, because
Mhm.
I've just spent too little time, on that summary. I went through it like in 30 minutes, as opposed to I spent like 4 hours for reading a book. So the day after I finish the book, I continue thinking. There is like this small software in my brain, and I think about things through the lens of what I've read more easily, and that's how things stick. So I don't know if that's for you. The best books that I've read, I continue to think about them, and they are like installed in my brain. Why it
Mhm.
never happens with summaries.
Yes, I completely agree. I never do book summaries because there's just no point, Like whatever you can capture in a one-page summary is not going to be in enough detail or nuance to really shift your thinking. It's like it just the constraint of it being one page and reading it in 30 seconds is just not going to be able to change your brain in the way that you
Yes.
ideally want it to be changed, and like and with the constraint or the lever of more time spent thinking about an idea, also like the examples that the book provides or
Yeah.
debunking the counterpoints, right? Because like you might be kind of skeptical about something and then the author's like addressing all the points that you are skeptical about because they've thought about this for longer than you have, like that convinces you. It's like there's this great clip that I include in one of my newsletters from the movie The Last King of Scotland, um, and it's about this African dictator. He was actually a really bad guy, but I think the clip is actually a really useful, a learning moment where basically like he's yelling at his advisor. He has an advisor, and he's like, you didn't tell me not to do this thing. Like you're my advisor. You should have told me. And the advisor says, like, I did tell you. I did. And he says, but you did not convince me. And therein lies the difference, right? Like, and that applies to all of us as builders, operators, ICs, leaders. It's like if you just say something, like, you know, you you can pat yourself on the back and say like, "Oh, I did my duty. Like, I spoke
Yeah.
up, like that was it. If people don't act, that's not my fault." But that's not putting skin in the game. That's not a sense of owner. That's not coming with a posture of ownership, right? Whereas like advocating for something, persuading the person, using all the mental faculties and creativity that you possibly can to convince someone is totally different.
Yeah.
And so, like a book, for example, is like, is that author using everything they can to convince you, the reader, of an argument, which is totally different than like a one-page summary of like the basic premise of the book.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I love the reference. I watched the movie actually,
Oh, you've
and
seen it. I actually
yeah,
haven't seen
yes,
the
yes,
movie. I think
yes.
it's too upsetting. Like
It's a
I've read the
beautiful movie.
Wikipedia. I actually read the summary there, the Wikipedia, but how was it? The movie?
It it's kind of upsetting, but it's also a great movie.
It
So
seems really
if
good. It
it,
won a bunch of
yeah,
awards. I think like Forrest Whitaker won
yeah,
multiple. I think he won a Academy Award plus like Golden
yes,
Globe and
exactly,
multiple awards,
yes,
SAG Award
yeah.
for that.
Yeah, and it was a small movie in terms of budget and stuff. So it was kind of upsetting that he won all the awards for that because for that role, but it was really amazing at that.
Mm.
So you should watch it.
I will one of these days. I'll work myself up to it.
So Wes, thank you so much for this. We are wrapping this up. It was a great chat. I took so many notes, and thank you again for being here with us today.
Yeah, this was a lot of fun. Thank you so much, Luca.
Thank you. Thank you so much for listening. If you found this chat valuable, you can subscribe to the show on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app. Also, please consider giving us a rating or leaving a review, as that really helps other listeners find the show. You can find all past episodes and learn more about the show at refactoring.fm. See you in the next episode.